What's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 30-something of I'm stuck at home watching video of old shoots, wishing I could be right back there. On today's episode, I'm gonna walk you through a shoot that I did a couple months back. This type of shoot is a shoot I do a lot, and that's going out and creating an image library for a company that they can kind of have on hold and pull from as they see fit to use certain images. And the whole goal here is to kind of showcase not just the company, but their employees and their location and the surroundings and the culture that they've created. So this job comes to us from Second Melody in Morristown, New Jersey. And Second Melody is a branding studio that kind of specializes in identity development and messaging and collateral and web development and design and a little bit of everything, and they do it very well. So they called and said, hey, we've got this client up in Cambridge. We got to do the thing where we go in and make a bunch of images, and they also need a bunch of headshots for kind of C-suite, and they also have a lab on site because it's a biotech company, and so they're doing research and development in the same location. And so I said, great. And I sent the estimate and they agreed and we booked the trip. So I'll walk you through pre-production really quick. We kind of went through a bunch of different scenarios as to how this would play out. And there was a lot of back and forth to get scheduling and timing down because we only had one day to shoot this whole thing. Cambridge is about 4 hours away from me, 4.5 hours away, depending. So we drove up the day before. We did a quick walkthrough of the location because I had never seen it and just kind of wanted to get a feel for what we had to tackle the next day and also where we were going to do the headshots because they wanted everything to be pretty environmental. The problem being that the client was going to be moving offices. And so we couldn't show too much environment because within a couple months they would be in a new location with very cool, pretty new stuff, and we didn't want the shoot that we had just done to be irrelevant at that point. We did the walkthrough, we already had our shot list. We showed up the next morning and first thing we tackled was all of the lab shots. And the setup, camera-wise, was Leica SL2 with the 35mm and 75mm apo-summicron lenses. And that was gonna be it. I was gonna walk with that to do all these live action scenarios. Lighting was a Profoto B2 kit with the 2-foot Octa, which is kind of my go-to for this type of shoot. It's small, it's lightweight, it's very portable, and I can get around pretty quickly with it. And depending on where we are, it could be a very directional light, or I could just be flooding the room to kind of raise all the ambient levels, or we could be matching to the daylight coming through the windows. It all kind of depends, but it's a pretty versatile little kit, and it's got enough power to get me through on that. The other thing is that most of these live action scenarios are shot pretty wide open or with a very shallow depth of field, so we really want to kind of separate our subject from what they're doing. So because I didn't go to school for science, I have no idea what these people are actually doing and what their jobs entail. And so the way I kind of approach this shoot and all shoots where I don't really know what's happening is to quickly befriend my subject and find out in very basic terms what their job is and what it is that they're doing, and then try to figure out the best way to photograph that and to make them look as cool as possible doing that. And of course, most regular people don't want their picture taken. They don't want to be on camera. They just want to kind of go through their day and get their shit done and go home. And then all of a sudden there's, this guy with a camera asking them to slow down and stop. And part of it is kind of reading your audience and understanding who wants to have their picture taken and who doesn't, because in order to get those really kind of great shots, you have to make sure that that person is in that great of a mood. Some are easier than others. In a nutshell though, we basically spent a few hours in the morning touring around this laboratory, and they had picked out certain people who they wanted to highlight and certain people who were willing to have their photo taken. But we also kind of approached people on the fly and just walked around. Everybody knew that we were gonna be there. They knew that they were supposed to be welcoming to us, and they were. This was a very welcoming group. And so in between the shots that we knew we had to get, we'd kind of stop and chat with people and get them to do things. And for instance, this young lady, she was just going about her day. We happened to be standing there waiting for someone else. I kind of just asked her briefly if I could take her picture, and then promptly followed it up with that it wasn't really a choice. I was telling her I was going to take her picture, and she obliged, and she went about her business, and I kind of let her go about her business because she was actively involved in a project, and so I didn't want to have to stop her, slow her down, or break her up, so I just kind of worked around her. So as I was working through that and kind of shooting real quick, one of the ADs that was there said to me, hey, do you think we can get her over there? and she had spotted this little location just kind of in another aisle over that was a little more appealing, had a cooler looking machine or something like that. And I promised her it would take less than like 90 seconds, and it did, and we let her go back to work, and then we moved on with our way. So we had kind of a plan as to what we needed and what we wanted, but we were able to kind of wiggle around with inside of that. And so lab shoots are always pretty easy as far as I'm concerned, because you do have all this stuff, you have all this equipment, you have all these cool looking tubes and blinking lights and really large refrigeration units and just stuff that's cool that the general public doesn't usually get to see, and so it usually photographs pretty well too. The other problem with labs in general is that usually they have a lot of stuff stacked up and there's stuff everywhere, and so even if it is a very clean environment, it can sometimes look cluttered and feel a little stuffy. So my job is also to kind of find the best spot, get all the shit out of the way, and make a pretty clean image. And so what I quickly realized here is that this lab was broken up into little kind of aisles, and I could shoot through the workstations. And so I could get the idea of, hey, there's stuff everywhere around them. They're immersed in their work, but I could kind of shoot through and get their faces and whatever they were doing in their workspaces without kind of focusing on the clutter that surrounded them. So that was kind of my formula. I did a lot of shoot through stuff, shooting from one aisle to the next just because it felt good and it looked good. Because we're moving a lot and we're going back and forth, I can't shoot them tethered to a computer. It just wouldn't make sense, even if it was on a cart rolling around with us. It's just a lot of stuff to have. So for these kind of shoots, I don't shoot tethered. So because I'm not sharing the images with people on a screen as they come up, I need to stop in between and kind of show everybody what's happening to make sure that we're getting what the agency needs and that client thinks that what we're doing looks great. And so we kind of stop every setup or two and just kind of scroll through the camera and make sure everything looks cool and know that we got something that'll work, and then we can move on. The entire lab has giant windows all along one side, and so it was actually quite bright and airy and felt good in there. So a lot of what I did lighting wise was just kind of supplementing, and we had all this window light coming in from one side, so I was just kind of balancing off on the other side. So not a lot of directional light. I actually ended up just bouncing the light into the ceiling and just kind of letting it spill all over the place just to create big kind of airy environments, and it worked out really well in my favor. So I'll take that. So after lab, we came out, we had a couple people that we had to do some focus shots on. Not necessarily headshots, but just kind of them in their environment. Apparently they're gonna have little sections on the website, so they needed to make sure that we got those people. So after the office shots, we kind of had a short little break, and we had to prep for the headshots, which were gonna be all afternoons. We had a pretty big issue to tackle, which was the client really wanted everything to be environmental. They wanted to show off, but at the same time, they're moving, and so they didn't want to show off that location, but also they didn't want to redo these headshots when they finally got to their new locations. So how do you balance that and get images that will last a long time, even though the client isn't going to be there a long time? And so after a lot of walking around, a lot of talking, and a lot of back and forth, we came up with a plan. We had found a conference room that had whiteboards all the way around it. And we decided that we would take a series of the whiteboards and draw a bunch of science stuff all over them, and that would be our backdrop. It would kind of be, set back and out of focus, and so it wouldn't be really in your face, but it would just kind of be the idea of they're here, they're working, they're sketching, they're thinking things out, they're pushing the cause forward, right? I had done this before on a couple other shoots. I always liked the way it looks. The problem was there was nothing on the whiteboards, and so it couldn't be any sensitive information or any sort of real data, because you don't want to be giving away trade secrets. So we enlisted our handler to kind of grab some people and have them come in and draw. And as luck would have it, nobody really wanted to do that. So we did have a couple of people come in and draw some things, but it was kind of up to us to come up with a plan for this. And so after kind of stalking around the office and looking at some other whiteboards that were in actual use, we had enough ideas to come back and sketch. And so I enlisted everybody in the room to help out. And what we came up with was this backdrop. And we had just enough room in the conference room to gain a little bit of separation off that whiteboard and still have room to light everything and have me pressed up in the corner shooting. I flipped over to the phase system for this because I love doing headshots on that camera. And I love shooting on that 150mm lens because it's just perfect. And so again, we used the ProPhoto B2 with the 2-foot Octa as our main light here, positioned kind of pretty far away for what I do, but just created a nice, even, pretty light, nothing fancy, but solid. And then we lit the background independently with ProPhoto B1, which was off in the back right corner of the room, just kind of spilling in. It was kind of a regular headshot session from there. We had people come in every 15 minutes and we shot a slew of photos, and we checked all of our work as we were going and made sure that people were happy, and then sent them out the door and got the next one in. And so we did that for probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours during the afternoon. Wrapped it all up, packed it all up, and came home. And spent the next couple days kind of processing everything, and ended up delivering, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 70 or 90 images, I think, as the image library. That was all just usable, good looking content that they could have and pick and choose from for whatever they need. When we're doing these kinds of shoots, we need to keep in mind that because we don't know where the image is going to end up, we have to leave a little bit of room everywhere. And so everything is shot a little bit wider than I normally would feel comfortable with. But we need to leave room for layouts and whatever, text and all that. And as far as the headshots go, same kind of thing. We actually left them quite wide. First of all, we shot horizontal, but that whiteboard wasn't large enough to fill the remaining areas. And so, which was okay because we knew they were going to crop in, but we just wanted to leave some space in case they did use them somewhere else. And so, as you'll see kind of here, we did zoom in and crop and kind of look at what would a finished product look like, because sometimes when you're looking and you see all this, the rest of the world around the image, it's hard to kind of wrap your head around it. And so we wanted to make sure everybody understood, like, hey, this is what it'll look like when it's all said and done, probably. And so what you're seeing here is the original shot followed by the final crop. And I know people are saying like, wow, you threw a lot of the image away. And yes, that is true, but I don't really need to worry about that, especially on this camera system, because we are shooting 100 megapixels. There's more than enough room to trash and still have really large, beautiful images. So it's unfortunate, and I would love to fill the frame and, you know, have everything be perfect, but sometimes you just need to leave a bunch of space and let the designers have room to make something of their own later on down the road. So that's the deal. That was our shoot in Cambridge. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll take away a little something from that. As always, please subscribe. Please thumbs up if you thought this was okay. Ring the bell, leave a comment, do all the YouTube stuff, and I'll see you next time.